We talk a lot about being honest with other people, but what about being honest with ourselves? I mean, truly, brutally honest about our deepest beliefs. Well, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche had this incredibly challenging idea about a kind of integrity that he believed most of us are completely missing. And listen, Nietzsche wasn't just a little bit worried about this. He was genuinely astonished, even disgusted. He looked out at the world, a world just flooded with information and ideas, and he was just shocked by what he saw. He felt that almost everyone, it didn't matter how smart or successful they were, was being dishonest in the one place it matters most, inside their own head. So, what was this huge failure he was seeing everywhere? What did he find so contemptible about the way we hold on to our own beliefs? Well, that's the mystery we're going to dive into right now. Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at his shocking accusation against modern humanity. Then, we'll get super clear on what he actually meant by an intellectual conscience. We'll explore that classic battle between comfort and truth, see how this conscience can be used as a tool, understand the path of what he called the free spirit, and finally, we'll see why Nietzsche thought this was our single most modern and essential virtue. Okay, so let's get right into it with Nietzsche's shocking accusation. And believe me, he was not pulling any punches here. He looked at modern society and he saw this fundamental flaw, this kind of intellectual laziness that he believed was holding all of us back from who we could be. He literally called it an intellectual poverty. And the key thing here is that he saw it everywhere. It had nothing to do with being rich or poor or whether you went to college or not. It was about this simple and to him, mind-boggling fact that most people are totally fine believing things without ever demanding real hard evidence. We're just happy to live by the traditions and ideas we inherit without ever really asking, hey, is this actually true? And for him, that was a massive failure of the modern spirit. And that brings us right to the heart of his argument. Okay, so if this intellectual poverty is the big problem, then what's the fix? What in the world is this intellectual conscience that Nietzsche thought was so incredibly rare? So yeah, what is this crucial quality? What does it even mean to have an intellectual conscience? Well, here's the definition. It's that internal drive, that little voice inside you that demands reasons for your beliefs and forces you to take responsibility for them. See, it's not enough to just have a belief. You have to feel this deep need to know why you have it. And Nietzsche pointed out that even the most gifted people often don't have this. They'd rather just stick with what's comfortable than face the messy discomfort of doubt. So you can really see the two different mindsets here, right? Someone with an intellectual conscience is always asking why. They would honestly rather feel the unease of not knowing than accept an easy, cozy answer that they haven't checked. They just refuse to follow the herd. For a person like that, believing something without proof isn't just a mistake. It feels like a failure of integrity, a personal failing. Without this, Nietzsche says you're really just a passenger in your own life. This whole idea sets up a really fundamental choice that, honestly, every single one of us has to make, whether we know it or not. It's this constant battle between our deep-seated desire for comfort and our desire for truth. I mean, just look at this contrast. On one side, you've got the path of comfort. This is all about seeking happiness, going with the flow, getting that social acceptance, and just taking the easy answers that morality and tradition hand you. But on the other side, you've got the path of truth. This is about a desire for real, genuine certainty. And let's be honest, it's often a pretty lonely path. For the person on this path, believing something without a solid why is just an insult to their own dignity. This is the path of what Nietzsche called the sovereign individual. Now, this isn't just some abstract personal choice. Nietzsche argued that the fact that so few people have this conscience has huge consequences for society. It's the very reason that these grand and often totally false belief systems can take root and grow. So here's the critical link. Because most people don't demand proof for their beliefs, they become sitting ducks for what Nietzsche called the teachers of the object of existence. The people who create these big moral systems and ideologies that promise safety and meaning. The masses get swayed so easily because, at the end of the day, feeling safe feels better than being intellectually rigorous. And this is where the intellectual conscience becomes this incredibly powerful tool. It really works like this. First, you come across some big idea or a so-called purpose for your life. Second, instead of just accepting it, you demand proof. You ask, why? Show me the logic. Third, you test its foundations. You kick the tires and see if it holds up. And finally, if it falls apart, you dismantle what Nietzsche called the tragedy of these man-made meanings. So, if this tool is so good at tearing down false structures, what does it build in their place? Well, this leads us to Nietzsche's ultimate goal for the individual, what he calls the path of the free spirit. Nietzsche uses this amazing metaphor here. He says the free spirit has to be willing to put up with the hunger of not knowing. They'd rather starve for real knowledge than stuff themselves at the easy, comforting bread of lies. It's all about valuing the search, the inquiry, more than the comfort of having a simple answer. And that hunger, that's not a weakness. It is the ultimate sign of strength. For Nietzsche, this kind of tough intellectual honesty is the absolute prerequisite for humanity to evolve. By choosing this difficult path, we start to move beyond our current limits, and we cultivate a higher way of being. This is what paves the way for his famous idea of the Übermensch, or the Overman. So let's wrap this all up. Why does this demanding, really difficult concept matter so much, especially to us today? Well, Nietzsche saw it as the single most essential virtue for living a truly authentic life. When you get right down to it, Nietzsche's entire argument boils down to this one powerful idea. How you believe is just as important, maybe even more important, than what you believe. The actual content of your belief is almost secondary to the integrity of the process you use to get there. So really, this whole thing is a call to arms for your mind. It's a challenge to value your own mental integrity more than you value fitting in with the crowd. To demand evidence and to reject blind faith, no matter how comforting it feels. It's about finally taking on the responsibility of creating your own meaning, your own object of existence. And that is the foundational step toward building a life that is genuinely, authentically yours. And that leaves us with one last pretty provocative question to think about. I want you to look at your own deepest convictions, the things you hold as absolutely true about the world and about yourself, and just ask, when was the last time you really, truly demanded a why? How strong is your intellectual conscience?